The shuttle doors opened with a loud hiss. Cold air rushed into the docking bay of the Galactic Military Academy. This was Station 7, the most famous military training center in the entire galaxy. Every year, young cadets from hundreds of different planets came here to become soldiers. Among the crowd of alien cadets, there was one human girl. Her name was. She was 22 years old and she stood at only 165 centimeters tall. Compared to the massive aliens around her, she looked like a child standing among giants. The cadets walked past her with their heavy armored scales clicking on the metal floor. They floated by with their thin, almost transparent bodies. But the biggest of all were They stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 eyes, thick skin and muscles that looked like they were carved from stone. They had conquered 17 planets before joining the Galactic Coalition. They were known as the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Kept walking toward the registration area. She did not look left or right. She kept her eyes forward and her face calm. But others were watching her. Was the alpha of the cadets. This meant he was the strongest and most powerful among his group. His 4 yellow eyes found the small human girl in the crowd and his lips curled into an ugly smile. He had heard about humans before. Everyone in the galaxy had heard about them. They were a young species from a dangerous planet called Earth. They had soft skin, no claws, no fangs, no armor, and no natural weapons of any kind. The galaxy believed that humans had joined the coalition because they were good at talking, not fighting. Turned to his packmates, the other cadets who followed him everywhere. They were all large and dangerous, but none of them were as big as himself. "Look at that," said loudly. He wanted everyone nearby to hear him. "They are sending their weakest ones now. Maybe we should put her in a cage with the cleaning robots. That is where she belongs." The other laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that shook the air. Some cadets from other species laughed too. They were not really amused, but they wanted to stay on the good side of the. Nobody wanted to make enemies with the strongest warriors in the galaxy. Heard every word, but she did not stop walking. She did not turn around. She did not say anything. She simply adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and continued toward the registration terminal. At the checkpoint, an older human officer was waiting. His name was Lieutenant. He was in his 50s, with hair and a long scar running down the side of his face. That scar was a memory from the border wars, a terrible conflict that had happened before humanity earned its place in the coalition. Lieutenant looked at its identification card and began checking her file on his holographic screen. His eyebrows rose slightly as he read. "Cadet," he said in a low voice so only she could hear, "do not let them get inside your head. They do not know any better." "I am not bothered, sir," replied. Her voice was steady and calm. "Good." The lieutenant continued reading her file. His eyes moved quickly across the screen and something changed in his expression. It was a look of surprise and then respect. Taekwondo, national champion of Korea for 3 years in a row. Hapkido, 4th Dan black belt, certified instructor in military combat techniques. He looked up from the screen and stared at her for a moment. "They have no idea what you are, do they?" "No, sir, and I would like to keep it that way, at least for now." Lieutenant nodded slowly. He understood. In his long career, he had learned that the most dangerous warriors were often the ones who did not look dangerous at all. "They think they are the masters of combat," he said quietly. "They believe that strength is only about size and power. They have never faced someone like you." "I did not come here to fight them, sir. I came here to train and to serve." "I know, but sometimes the fight comes to you whether you want it or not." He handed back her identification card. "Be careful, Cadet. They do not like to be embarrassed, and their alpha is the worst of them all. He has never lost a fight in his life." Took her card and put it in her pocket. "Thank you for the warning, sir." She walked into the main corridor of the academy. The walls were high and made of dark metal. Lights glowed along the ceiling, casting everything in a cold blue color. Hundreds of cadets moved through the hallways, speaking in dozens of different languages. Translation devices hung from their ears, turning every word into something they could understand. Found her assigned quarters in the human section of the dormitory. The room was small and simple. A bed, a desk, a storage locker, and a small window that looked out into the endless darkness of space. She put her bag on the bed and stood by the window for a moment. Stars glittered in the distance like scattered diamonds. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, billions of kilometers away. She thought about her grandmother back in Korea. The old woman had trained since she was 5 years old, every morning, every evening for 17 years. Kicks, punches, blocks, throws, and locks, again and again until the movements were as natural as breathing. Her grandmother had told her something before she left for the academy. The tiger does not need to roar to prove it is dangerous. Let them think you are a mouse. When the time comes, show them what you really are. Smiled at the memory. Outside her door, she could hear cadets walking past, their heavy footsteps shaking the floor. One of them said something in their language, and the others laughed. They were laughing at her, she knew it. She did not care. Let them laugh, she thought. Let them believe I am weak. Let them think I am nothing. The truth would come out soon enough. 3 weeks passed at the Galactic Military Academy. Woke up every morning at 5 o'clock. She trained alone in her small room, practicing her kicks and punches in silence. Then she attended classes with the other cadets, learning about starship systems, alien cultures, and military tactics. The other species mostly ignored her. They continued to mock her whenever they saw her in the hallways. Was the worst. He would walk past her and make comments about how small and fragile she looked. His packmates would laugh every time. Never responded. She just kept walking, kept training, kept waiting. Then came the day of the rite of standing. This was an ancient tradition at the academy. Every cycle, all new cadets had to fight in ritual combat. The winners would be placed in the warrior class. The losers would be sent to support roles like cleaning, cooking, or carrying equipment. It was a system that had existed for thousands of years, long before humans even knew that aliens existed. The training arena was enormous. It was a circular space with high walls and bright lights shining down from above. Thousands of seats surrounded the fighting area, and they were all filled with cadets and instructors who had come to watch. Had already fought twice. In his first fight, he broke his arm with a single strike. In his second fight, he cracked his chest armor and sent the creature flying across the arena. Nobody could stand against him. He was faster and stronger than anyone expected, and he showed no mercy to his opponents. After each victory, he would look up at the crowd and roar. The audience would roar back. It was a display of pure dominance. The humans were scheduled to fight last. There were only 4 human cadets in this intake, and 3 of them had already been defeated. They had fought bravely, but they were simply not strong enough to match the alien warriors. They were assigned to support roles and sent away with their heads down. Now only remained. When her name was called, the arena became quiet. Everyone wanted to see what would happen to the last human. Walked to the center of the ring. She was barefoot, wearing only a simple training uniform. Her hair was tied back in a tight ponytail. Her face showed no emotion at all. The training master, an old with faded scales, was about to assign her a standard opponent. But before he could speak, a deep voice echoed through the arena. "I will test this one myself." Everyone turned to look. Was standing up from his seat in the observation area. His 4 yellow eyes were fixed on, and there was a hungry smile on his face. The training master hesitated. Alpha, the human cadets are usually matched against opponents of similar. "I will test her," repeated. His voice was like thunder. "Unless she wants to give up now and save herself a trip to the medical bay." The arena was completely silent. Every cadet, every instructor, every observer was watching. They all expected to surrender. No sane person would fight. He was 3 times her size and had already destroyed 2 opponents today. But did not surrender. "I accept," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. A murmur ran through the crowd. Some cadets laughed nervously. Others shook their heads in disbelief. The other human cadets in the stands covered their faces with their hands. They could not watch. Descended into the ring. Each step he took made the floor shake. When he stood in front of, the difference between them was almost comical. She barely reached his chest. His arms were thicker than her entire body. His claws, even covered with safety padding, looked like they could crush stone. "I will make this quick," said, looking down at her with amusement. "Humans break so easily. It is almost not fair." Said nothing. She simply shifted her weight slightly and raised her hands into a relaxed guard position. The starting tone sounded. The fight had begun. Attacked immediately. He swung his massive arm toward her in a blow that could have destroyed a metal wall. It was fast, much faster than something that large should be able to move. But was faster. She did not step backward. She stepped forward, dropping low and sliding under his arm like water flowing around a rock. Before could understand what was happening, she was already behind him. Her knee came up. Her hip rotated. 17 years of training flowed through her body in a single, perfect moment. Her foot connected with his lower spine. The sound was terrible, a wet, grinding crack that echoed through the silent arena. It was the sound of bone breaking, of something that should never break being shattered by overwhelming force. His body went stiff. His legs stopped working. His arms dropped to his sides. For one long second he stood frozen, his 4 eyes wide with shock and confusion. Then he fell. His massive body crashed to the floor with a sound like an earthquake. He did not move. He could not move. His spinal cord was damaged and his brain could no longer control his legs. Stood over him, breathing normally. She was not even sweating. Her stance was relaxed, her hands at her sides. The arena was silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody could believe what they had just seen. The smallest cadet in the academy had just destroyed the strongest warrior in the galaxy with a single kick. Then somewhere in the crowd someone screamed, and the chaos began. Medical teams rushed into the arena, roared with rage and grief. Other species scrambled to get away from the fighting area. Instructors shouted for order, but nobody listened. Through it all, stood perfectly still in the center of the ring. She had done what she came to do. Now everyone would know the truth about humans. The medical team arrived within seconds. 6 alien doctors surrounded its fallen body, their equipment beeping and flashing as they scanned his injuries. An anti-gravity stretcher floated down from the ceiling, and they carefully rolled the massive onto it. The diagnosis came quickly. 3 bones in his spine were cracked. His spinal cord was badly damaged. He would live because we're very hard to kill, but he would need many months of medical treatment before he could walk again. Guards escorted out of the arena through a side door. They did not arrest her or put chains on her hands. They simply walked beside her, their weapons ready, watching the crowd for any signs of attack. The in the audience were screaming for blood. Some of them tried to jump into the arena, but security barriers activated and pushed them back. Their roars of anger filled the entire station. Was taken to an isolation room deep inside the academy. It was a small chamber with walls, a single table, and 2 chairs. There were no windows. The door locked behind her with a heavy click. She sat down and waited. 1 hour later, the door opened again. A small human woman walked in. She had hair pulled back in a neat bun, and her uniform carried the symbols of an admiral. This was Admiral, the highest-ranking human officer in this sector of space. She had fought in 3 major wars and won 2 of them. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. Admiral sat down across from. For a long moment she said nothing. She simply studied the young cadet's face. "Do you understand what you have done?" the Admiral finally asked. "I defended myself within the rules of the right, Admiral. You broke the spine of the Alpha of the cadets. You did it in front of thousands of witnesses. You did it on his first major challenge of the year." The Admiral leaned forward slightly. "They are one of the most powerful species in the Coalition, and you just humiliated them in front of the entire galaxy." His expression did not change. "He challenged me, ma'am. I responded the way I was trained to respond. They are demanding punishment. They want you expelled from the Academy. Some of them are calling for your execution." "I broke no rules." "That is not the point." Admiral's voice was firm but not angry. "Politics in the Coalition are complicated. They have many allies. They control important trade routes. They provide soldiers for Coalition defense forces. If we make them too angry, there could be serious problems for humanity." Was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady and calm. "With respect, Admiral, the humiliated themselves. They assumed I was weak because I am human, because I am small, because I do not have claws or armor or fangs." She met the Admiral's eyes directly. "That is not my failure, that is theirs." Admiral leaned back in her chair. A small smile appeared on her face, just for a second before disappearing again. "The Coalition Council is having an emergency meeting," she said. "They want to review the footage of the fight." "Let them review it." "You sound very confident." "I followed every rule of the right. Every species in the Coalition has the right to defend their honor in combat. I am not asking for special treatment. I am asking for equal treatment, the same treatment that any other species would receive." The Admiral nodded slowly. She seemed to be thinking about something. "The video of your fight has already spread across the civilian networks," she said. "Every human colony in the Coalition has seen it. Billions of people watched a human girl defeat the greatest warrior with a single kick." Blinked, she had not expected that. "Do you know what people are calling it?" Admiral continued. "No, ma'am." "They are calling it the kick heard across the galaxy." The Admiral stood up and walked toward the door. "You have changed how every species in known space thinks about humanity. Before today, they thought we were weak diplomats who talked our way into the Coalition. Now they are not so sure." She paused with her hand on the door handle. "I hope you are ready for what comes next, Cadet, because after today, nothing will ever be the same. Not for you and not for humanity." The door closed behind her and was alone again. She sat in the silence of the isolation room and thought about everything that had happened. She had not planned to become famous. She had not wanted to start a political crisis. She had simply done what she was trained to do. But she understood now that some actions have consequences that go far beyond what we intend. Her grandmother had taught her that the tiger does not need to roar to prove it is dangerous. Well, now the whole galaxy knew that humans were tigers, not mice. The question was, what would happen next? Outside the isolation room, she could hear distant sounds, voices arguing, footsteps running, the rumble of anger that seemed to shake the very walls of the station. Closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Whatever came next, she would face it the same way she had faced. With calm, with focus, with the strength that came from years of training and discipline. The galaxy thought it knew what humans were. It was time to show them how wrong they had been. The Coalition Council chamber was the largest room had ever seen. It was built inside a hollow asteroid, with seats rising up in circles toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into shadow. Representatives from over 300 species sat in those seats, watching, waiting, judging. The session was being broadcast live to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Trillions of beings were watching. Stood in the center of the chamber, alone, surrounded by aliens who looked at her with curiosity, fear, or hatred. The ambassador spoke first. He was an old warrior, his skin covered with scars from countless battles. His voice boomed through the chamber like thunder. "This human is a deceiver," he roared. "She came to our academy pretending to be a normal cadet, but she is a weapon. She was sent to humiliate our people and damage our honor. We demand justice. We demand punishment." Murmurs of agreement came from several other delegations. They had many friends in the coalition, and those friends were now speaking up in support. A representative rose to speak. The human cadet clearly violated the spirit of the right of standing. The right is meant to test warriors fairly, not to allow hidden assassins to attack unprepared opponents. More voices joined in, more accusations, more demands for punishment. Then it was humanity's turn to respond. Admiral walked to the center of the chamber. She was small compared to most of the aliens around her, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had faced death many times and never flinched. "Before I speak," she said, "I would like to show the council exactly what happened." She activated a holographic display. The footage of the fight began to play. 6 different camera angles showed every moment in perfect detail. His confident approach, his mocking words, his powerful attack. And then's response. The step forward instead of backward, the perfect slip under his arm, the rotating hip, the devastating kick. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the chamber. Several species flinched at the sound. "This is what happened," Admiral said when the footage ended. "Alpha challenged Cadet, she accepted. She defeated him, that is all." "She used hidden skills," the ambassador shouted. "She concealed her true abilities." "Did she?" Admiral turned to face him directly. "Tell me, Ambassador, when your cadets enter the academy, do they announce every skill they possess? Do they list every fight they have won? Do they explain exactly how dangerous they are?" There was silence. "No," Admiral continued. "They do not, because that would be foolish. A warrior does not reveal his strengths to his enemies. This is basic military thinking. Every species knows this." She activated another holographic display. This one showed data, charts, and historical records. "Let me tell you something about humans," she said. "We evolved on a planet with a gravity 30% stronger than the. Our bones are denser. Our muscles are more efficient. We had to be strong just to survive." The display changed to show images of Earth's history. Predators with sharp teeth, harsh winters, deadly diseases. "We had no natural weapons," Admiral continued. "No claws, no fangs, no armor, so we made our own. We sharpened sticks and stones. We built traps. We learned to work together." The display now showed images of human combat throughout history. Ancient warriors with swords and spears. Martial artists practicing their forms. Soldiers training in modern combat techniques. And we learned to fight with our bodies. For thousands of years, we have been perfecting the art of unarmed combat. Every human culture developed its own fighting style. Boxing, wrestling, judo, taekwondo, Thai. Hundreds of different systems, all designed to turn the human body into a weapon. She pointed to, who stood quietly in the center of the chamber. "Cadet has trained in martial arts since she was 5 years old, 17 years of daily practice. She was a national champion on her. This is not hidden. This information was in her academy file. Anyone could have read it." The ambassador looked uncomfortable. He had clearly not bothered to read any human's file. "Your Alpha assumed that because Cadet was small, she was weak," Admiral said. "He assumed that because she had no claws, she was harmless. He assumed that because she was human, she was prey. He was wrong, and his mistake cost him his spine." The chamber was silent. Every representative was thinking about what they had just heard. Then something unexpected happened. A young rose from his seat. It was, second in command, now the new Alpha of the cadets. He walked down to the center of the chamber and stood before the council. "We withdraw our complaint," he said. The ambassador turned to him in shock. "What are you doing? You cannot." "I can and I am," interrupted. The human fought with honor. She defeated our alpha in fair combat. By our own laws, by the warrior codes we have followed for 1,000 generations, she has earned respect." He turned to face directly. For a long moment, the two warriors looked at each other. Then did something no had ever done to a human before. He bowed his head. "We request that Cadet be allowed to continue her training at the academy," he said, "and we request that she teach us what she knows." The chamber erupted in noise, voices shouting, arguments beginning, but through it all stood calmly in the center, her face showing no emotion. She had won, not just the fight but something much bigger. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. 6 months had passed since the kick that changed everything. The Galactic Military Academy looked very different now. The training grounds, which had once been separated by species, were now filled with mixed groups working together. Aliens of all kinds practiced side by side, learning from each other, growing stronger together. Stood in the center of the main training ring. Around her were cadets from a dozen different species. Practiced footwork patterns next to. Learned to use their armored tails in combination with joint lock techniques. Even a species known for keeping to themselves, had started attending the open training sessions. "Again," called out. Her voice was calm but firm. "Remember, power comes from the hip, not the arm. Rotate, transfer your weight, let your body do the work." A young cadet named tried the spinning kick again. He was enormous, nearly 3 meters tall, but he moved with surprising grace. His foot swept through the air in a smooth arc and connected with the training target with a satisfying crack. "Better," said, "much better, you are learning quickly." His face showed something that might have been a smile. It was hard to tell with expressions. "Human fighting is strange," he said. "On my world, we are taught that bigger is always stronger, but you show us that speed and technique can defeat size." "Both are important," replied. "A skilled small fighter can defeat a clumsy large fighter, but a skilled large fighter is the most dangerous of all. That is what you are becoming." She turned to address the whole group. "Take a break, drink water, we continue in 10 minutes." The cadets scattered, some heading to the water stations, others sitting down to rest their tired muscles. Watched them with a feeling of quiet satisfaction. 6 months ago, most of these aliens would not even speak to a human. Now they were training together, learning together, becoming something new. She walked to the observation deck at the edge of the training area. Someone was waiting for her there. Stood by the railing, watching the cadets below. His body was supported by a metal frame that helped him stand and walk. His spine was still healing. The doctors said he would make a full recovery, but it would take another year at least. He had refused the option of cybernetic replacement. The artificial spine would have let him walk normally within weeks, but had chosen the longer path, the natural healing that would take much more time but would make him whole again in his own body. "You could have killed me," he said as joined him at the railing. "Yes, but you did not." "No." She leaned against the railing and looked out at the training cadets. "Death was never the point. It was never what I wanted." "Then what did you want?" Was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that seemed so obvious to her, but might be difficult for her to understand. "Understanding," she finally said. "Your species thought humans were weak because we do not look like predators. You measured strength by size, by natural weapons, by obvious threat. But that is not what real strength is." "What is it then?" "Adaptation, persistence, the willingness to face something stronger and find a way to win anyway." She turned to look at him directly. "Humans did not survive our death world by being the biggest or the most deadly. We survived by being clever, by learning, by refusing to give up, no matter how bad things became." Considered her words. His 4 eyes blinked slowly, one pair at a time. "When I fell," he said, "I felt something I had never felt before. Not just pain, fear, real fear. I had never been afraid in my entire life. I did not know what it was like to be helpless. And now I understand why my people were wrong about humans. He looked down at the training ring where a young was practicing kicks with a human instructor. We thought we were the masters of combat because we had always been the largest and strongest. We never imagined that there could be another way to fight, another kind of strength. Every species has something to teach, said, and every species has something to learn. That is why we are here, not to prove that one species is better than another, but to become better together. Nodded slowly. It was strange to see him like this. 6 months ago he had been arrogant and cruel, mocking humans at every opportunity. Now he seemed different, quieter, more thoughtful. I will walk again, he said. The doctors are confident, and when I do I would like to learn from you, properly this time, not as an enemy but as a student. Looked at him for a long moment, then she nodded. I would be honored to teach you. A commotion from the training ring drew their attention. Below, a group of cadets had gathered around something. Could hear excited voices speaking in many different languages. She walked down to see what was happening. The cadets parted to let her through. In the center of the group, a young had just successfully executed a perfect side kick. His opponent, another twice his size, was lying on the mat, looking confused but not injured. The smaller's name was. He was the youngest cadet in the academy, and he had been struggling with his training for months. But today, something had clicked. He had used technique instead of strength, speed instead of power, and he had won. I did it, said, his 4 eyes wide with amazement. It actually worked. The other cadets cheered, and an Inhumans all celebrating together. Smiled. 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. The species did not trust each other. They did not respect each other. They certainly did not cheer for each other. But one kick had changed everything. Not because it had broken spine, but because it had broken something else. It had broken the wall of assumptions that separated the species. It had shown everyone that strength comes in many forms, and that the greatest warriors are not always the ones who look the most dangerous. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, one training session at a time, one lesson at a time, one kick at a time. And was proud to be part of it. She looked up at the observation deck where still stood, watching. He raised one massive hand in a gesture of respect. She nodded back. Then she turned to her students. All right, everyone. Break is over, back to training. We have a lot of work to do. The cadets groaned but smiled as they returned to their positions. They were tired and sore and covered in sweat. But they were also learning. And that was the most important thing of all.